Hello class, my name is Rich Peterson and I manage a small farm here in Chino Valley. In this video I'm going to show you my approach for managing a manure compost pile. I compost horse manure because I have ready access to larger quantities, and I compost it over the late fall and winter and then spread out in my cultivated areas in the spring a month or so before planting. At my location here in Chino, we have quite a bit of clay in the soil, so adding compost to the soil increases the soil moisture and the penetration of air. And as with many western soils, it is nitrogen deficient, so adding compost to the soil releases nutrients such as nitrogen in a form that is plant usable and adds to the soil organic content. Adding to the soil organic content supports essential soil bacteria and feeds the earthworms that are key to establishing the soil to plant connection. And in addition to the compost, I also plant cover crops to build up the green biomass, which I then cut and then incorporate into the soil in the spring. So let's go back now to how to start and manage the manure pile to make usable compost. There are four key factors for managing a successful compost pile. These would be the size of the pile, a suitable carbon to nitrogen ratio to initiate decomposition, suitable moisture content of the pile, and fourth would be enough oxygen to maintain the decomposition reaction. So let's talk about these factors in more detail. First is to build the pile to an optimum size. One pickup load is about the minimum to start a compost pile. Ideally, the pile would be about 3 to 4 feet tall and maybe about 5 to 7 square feet at the base. And in my setup, I'll have maybe 5 or 6 piles of that size that I'll manage over the winter and then incorporate it in the spring. And the decomposition process also will reduce that pile size by about 50%, so you'll end up with a smaller pile at the end of the decomposition process. Second, with regard to the carbon to nitrogen ratio, horse manure has about 25 times as much carbon as it does nitrogen, which is an okay ratio. Too much carbon, which is the dead brown material, and it'll take a long time to decompose. If you want to compost leaves, for example, you have to add some urea or some nitrogen content fertilizer to initiate the reaction. The pile needs, using natural materials, the pile will need some green organic materials to be successful. And fourth, with regard to the moisture content, actually third, this horse manure that I get is fresh and has quite a bit of moisture in it already, so I don't have to add any initially. But if it's a dry winter, I may go ahead and turn the hose on it to put some moisture back into it, but don't want a soup out of it, don't want it too wet. And fourth, the decomposition chemical reaction requires oxygen. So about every 10 days or so, I use the front loader on my tractor to turn the pile, top to bottom, and this re-aerates the pile to keep the reaction going. Pile with sufficient mass, nitrogen content, moisture and oxygen will begin to decompose within just a couple of days. I monitor the pile temps on my manure pile using a digital readout sensor. So let's go take a look at this and I'll show you what I mean. Here's the digital readout sensor, which I've placed on a 5-foot length of PVC pipe. The pipe is jammed down inside the pile, so that you are reading temperatures from well within the interior of this manure pile. And as we can see here, this temperature is about 143 degrees. This pile has been sitting here for 5 or 6 days now, and you can see it's about 30 inches tall, maybe about 5 to 7 feet across the base. I'll add another load to this to make it even bigger. And I would expect that within several more days the temperature will continue to increase to be in that 140 to 160 degree range, which is ideal for killing pathogens that may be in the manure pile and for breaking down the organics that are in it. Now this temperature will begin to drop as oxygen in the pile is used up and as the organics are used up as well. And as I mentioned, this temperature range, the 140 to 160 degree temp range, will kill the weed seeds that are in the pile and any diseases that may be present in the raw manure. I use the drop in temperature as it comes down, peaks and drops down into the 130, 120 degree range. I use this temperature as an indicator that it might be time to consider turning the pile. Again, coming out here with my front loader and turning top to bottom of the pile. And after 3 to 6 months of managing the pile during the winter, it's a shorter period of time in the summer because it's hot, but in the winter it's cold, so it takes a little bit longer in the winter time. 3 to 6 months in the winter of managing the pile in this manner, then it's ready to spread into the cultivated rows in late April. And these will be the cultivated rows out here. Right now I've got the cover crop of cereal rye getting started in the fall that will grow throughout the winter months and will provide the biomass, the green biomass, to further add some organics to the soil. Let me show you another application which I have for manure, this time in association with a table grape vineyard which I planted earlier this year. I derived this approach in reading and studying the Rambau text. This will be the same text that the viticulture class is using. This will be chapter 4, Growing Grapes Organically. In this approach, Rambau promotes using manure to promote the soil web, the soil food web with the roots of the plant, where the manure will promote the mycorrhizal fungi, nematodes, bacteria, and earthworms. My approach to promoting the soil food web has been to use a strip of sheep manure, like we see here, laid in a continuous manner down the vine row. Sheep manure or any type of pellet manure like that from rabbits or goats can be immediately applied without composting. And there are several advantages to this approach. First, the soil beneath the strip remains damp in the summer and provides a favorable environment for worms and bacteria necessary to build the soil food web. Having just laid this down in the summertime, I've already dug through some of this manure, taken out some weeds, and have found that the earthworm population is thriving in there. Secondly, the growth of annual grasses are minimized in the manure strip so that mowing is only necessary in the driveways. I don't have to mow underneath the trellis wires. My intent is to plant perennial native grasses like side oats, grama in the driveways to replace the annual grasses which come up with the monsoon rains. Eventually the combination of the manure strip and perennial grasses will further promote the soil food web to the advantage of these grapevines. Here in Chino, because of the potential for mid-May freezes, later bud break on these vines is a desirable thing. The manure and perennial grasses will cover the soil, keeping it cool in the springtime, and potentially delaying bud break by a short period of time.